Welcome everybody to our webinar on building your network in the nonprofit sector. I'm Bill Gesseman. I'm the Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at Michigan Nonprofit Association. We're thrilled you're able to join us for this important topic that I really think pertains to everybody, whether you're in the nonprofit sector or not, whether you're looking for a job or you'll be looking for a job in the future, or if you're just looking at expanding your network and being more connected to further whatever mission it is that you're working on within your current position. So we are going to be chatting here for about 45 minutes and have time for questions at the end. We have at least two great speakers and then myself. So we have three speakers today. Towards the end, we're going to hear from Chelsea Martin, who is the Civic Engagement Manager with Volunteer Centers of Michigan and Michigan Nonprofit Association. And we're going to actually start off with Allison Jones, who is a writer, an editor, and speaker who's committed to help people find careers that make a difference. She also gets to act on her passion each day as an editor at idealist.org. If you're not familiar with idealist.org, we definitely recommend you check that out after the webinar here today. So with that, Allison, I'll hand it over to you and let you get started.
Terrific. Hi, everyone. I don't know if I can get a sense if people can hear me. There was some connection issues I was having on my end, and I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really excited to talk with you all today about networking, particularly using social media to build your network online. And just a little bit about myself, as Bill just mentioned, I currently work at idealist.org, where I manage all of our career content and programming. So we have a lot of resources on how to find a nonprofit job, how to love the job that you have, and how to excel in the job that you have. So definitely check out idealistcareers.org. And outside of Idealist, I do a lot of speaking and writing about finding great careers in the sector and beyond, and I focus a lot on networking. Networking is one of my favorite topics to talk about, particularly using social media to build your network. And so, yeah, I'm ready to just share some helpful tips with you today. Right, so that, again, if you want to tweet at me, I'm at AJ Loves Ya. Great. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of networking online, I just want to share a bit about the beliefs that guide my networking efforts when I'm trying to build community online. And the first is it's not just about employers. And so a lot of times when we talk about networking online or doing anything online, really the attitude is, employers might be looking for you, Googling you, and you don't want them to see anything that's incriminating. And definitely I understand that. However, I prefer to think of building networking online as a way to bring opportunities to you. So instead of just saying, okay, well, I guess I'll just be, have a LinkedIn profile and leave it alone and not use Facebook as much or not use Twitter as much, instead taking the approach of, well, what kind of network do I want to build? What kind of opportunities do I want to encounter? And using social media to bring those opportunities to you so that when people are Googling things, they're not just saying, oh, okay, I don't see any photos of this person doing bad things, but instead they say, wow, this person's got a great personality, or I really like their ideas, or I would really love to work with this person. So you want to bring opportunities to you. It's not just about not offending employers. Think about what you what can find you. The second thing is there's more overlap in our networks than we think. And what I mean by this actually is there's more overlap in networking. And so I think definitely while Twitter is different from, say, going to a networking event and handing out your business card in terms of that, in terms of how you might approach someone, a lot of the basics of networking still apply. And I'm going to go over that in this presentation. But really, it's not just about, for example, you don't just want to throw your business card at someone and say, call me if you have a job offer. You wouldn't do that in person. You certainly want to do that online. You want to be warm, you want to be friendly, you want to give as much as you get, and you do that offline and you do that online as well. The third thing is you have to know what you offer. I see far too many people who say things like, oh, I'll take anything, I need any kind of job, or I don't care, whatever's out there, I'll take it. You're approaching, not just job seeking, but you're approaching networking really from a place of weakness. And the truth is you have stuff to offer no matter where you are in your career. So think about what you add, what you're interested in, curiosities that you have that you can share. And finally, you have to be deliberate. So if you're not, for example, most people don't believe me when I say this, but I am quite the introvert. A great night for me is actually staying at home and reading. writing. So given that, if I want to meet people, whether it be online or offline, I have to put it on my calendar. I have to set aside time to do it. I have to be deliberate. And so that's something that I keep in mind and I encourage other people to do as well. So the first thing to keep in mind when you're networking is to understand the value that you add. So it goes back to my earlier point of you don't have to approach networking in terms of, I don't have anything and I need stuff, right? So unfortunately, when people think about networking, some of the first things that come to mind are you're taking, you're being greedy, you're being disingenuous, and the truth is when you approach with an idea of, well, I can actually help someone with X, or I have really great knowledge and Y, you also think in terms of what you can give other people. And so I have a few questions for you to keep in mind to understand the value that you add. So what problem are you solving and how? And if you're on this webinar, chances are, you are, a nonprofit or community-oriented person. So how are you trying to tackle pressing issues in your community? What social issues are you trying to address? Are you committed to, volunteering and the power of volunteering to change communities? And how do you do that? Do you volunteer? Do you help manage volunteers? Really get a sense of what problem you're solving and how you're doing it. What are you excellent at and enjoy? So this can be work-related or non-work related. If you're a person who's really, if you're really great at writing, or if you're really great, if you have a curiosity that you're always cultivating, keep that in mind. That's a gift that you can share with other people. And the final thing is, what are you creating or exploring? And so I think it's important both in networking and in your own career to sort of have something that's yours, to build something. It can be something. For me, for the longest time, the thing that I built was my blog. So for 7 years, I was blogging about nonprofit careers for millennials, and I started that because I was starting my nonprofit career as a millennial. I had a public service fellowship from my college. I lived in Philadelphia with about 7 other people, and we were all working at small grassroots nonprofits throughout Philadelphia area, and I wanted to share what I was learning. So that's how I started my blog, and that's how sort of my own brand and my own community started growing there. But in that, I learned a lot of things about blogging, about technology. I also learned a lot about the nonprofit sector. So I was creating a community. I was participating in one, but I was creating one as well. And that's a gift that I could share. So these questions are really designed to help you figure out what value you add. Once you get a sense of the value that you add and what you're offering, I advocate the CKC approach to selecting a platform. And I can spell that out for you. Here we go. Community, knowledge, and comfort. So the truth is, there are lots of platforms out there. Obviously, most people focus on the big 3, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But before you use any platform, particularly for the goal of networking, there are, again, 3 questions you should ask. Are the people you want to meet there? So this may seem pretty straightforward, of course, but, I would say if lots of people are on Twitter, you're more likely to say, okay, maybe I should be on Twitter. But the truth is, if you are interested, say, in nonprofit management, for example, one of the best communities for nonprofit management that I've seen has been on LinkedIn. Whereas if I'm interested more in larger social justice conversations, who are some of the more grassroots leaders, I definitely want to get on Twitter. So really figure out who you want to meet and where they are. The second thing is, can you learn and contribute best there? Obviously, 140 characters is really tough for some people, whereas, on different platforms you have more space to say things. And what kinds of conversations are happening that you feel like you can participate in, right? So you want to pay attention to what's being said and how it's being said, and do you feel comfortable being there? And the last thing is, do you like using that platform? So it's, interestingly enough, I've met so many people who really don't like certain platforms. Like, I really don't like Twitter. It's too short, and people just say all kinds of random things. I really don't like Facebook. I don't like all the ads and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, if you don't like those platforms, don't use them, right? So you should use what you're comfortable with. And the reason why is because if you're not comfortable with it, if you really don't like it, you're not going to use it, and you're certainly not going to use it well. So here, if you're ready to jump into a particular platform, here are some things to keep in mind. Twitter. Twitter is great for discoverability and news, and that's primarily because it's so public and because the character count is so limited. So, it's really easy to hop on and participate in different conversations. It's really easy to find new people, find new topics to discuss. And my 2 favorite ways of doing that are actually through Twitter chats and simply looking on hashtags. So Twitter chats are when people get together, say, for an hour, and they answer a couple of questions related to a topic. So one of my favorite Twitter chats is actually CM World. It's Content Marketing World, and that's really great. If you are, my work, I do a lot of blogging, I do a lot of webinars, I do all this stuff. I produce a lot of content for my work, and I want to know how to get better at that. And every week they have a Twitter chat, and the hashtag is CM World. So it's a great way for me to learn new things and also to meet new people. LinkedIn is great for network management and learning, and you do this through groups and a lot of the articles. So once you meet someone, I think LinkedIn has a really powerful feature in terms of sorting through your contacts, adding notes to your contacts. I think a lot of people don't take advantage of the note feature. Went right below someone's photo, for example, you can put in notes about how you met and anything you should know about them. I really think it's really powerful for that. And the groups actually are really fascinating in terms of people sharing questions, asking questions and sharing resources. So definitely a good space for network management and learning. Facebook, I think, is great for intimacy and workshopping. So again, don't underestimate the power of your own network or the people you know now. If you ask a question, and I do it all the time, I'm looking for a really great book on X. Does anyone have any ideas? And people will chime in. So take advantage of your network. And also because it's so intimate, because you can be more private with Facebook, I find that it's actually great for some kind of workshopping even. Like I'll see a long conversation either on my timeline or in a group where people are on the same thread, sharing, asking more questions, sharing more resources, and because people are more likely to know each other, it tends to be a bit more intimate. And email. Email is not a social media platform, but honestly, what be sending someone an email saying, hey, well, let's meet up for coffee, or, to make sure that you're sending messages to people on a regular basis. Email is really great for that, again, because of the intimacy and also because of the frequency and immediacy of it. So not everyone will check their LinkedIn profile every day. Not everyone will check Twitter every day. But you can guarantee most people are checking their email every day. So definitely keep email and maintain those relationships at the top of your list. And the final tip I want to offer is manage your expectations and time. So, just because you tweet something does not mean people are going to, come rushing towards you and say, oh, you're brilliant, I want to be your friend. You have to say, okay, I'm going to tweet at least once a day, and hopefully I'll connect with maybe 2 new people this week or something like that. And I have, again, a few questions and tips for you in terms of how to manage your expectations. So keep that, first thing to keep in mind is you're not going to connect with everyone, and this is true online and offline. There are going to be people that you might tweet at, or there might be people you connect with on LinkedIn where you're not really connecting, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to be a great person for your network, and that's totally fine. The same thing happens offline. You might go to a networking event, talk to someone for a few minutes, and then say, oh, okay, and just walk away. That's totally fine. You have to give to and nurture your network. And again, this goes back to my earlier point of what do you have to offer to others, right? So a good example would be, and it can be something really simple. Like if on LinkedIn you get a notification that someone changed jobs, send them. Yes, you can click the little like button and fill in an automatic congratulations. And you can also send them a message saying, wow, so happy to hear that you found a great opportunity. Would love to know more about it. Nurture that relationship, keep in touch with people. And this flows into my final point. It takes time to cultivate relationships. So, again, when it comes to networking, people want immediacy, especially if you're looking for a job. But the truth is, it takes time to have a relationship where people feel comfortable making those kinds of introductions that could help you find a new opportunity. So be in it for the long haul. It's not about, oh, I need a job in 2 weeks, so I guess I better network right now. It's, I just want to meet people who I can help and who can help me, where we have a mutual interest in growing in our careers and in growing in the same field. So how can we work together? So take time and approach it from a very mutual way. So what you can do right now, so I talked about, the framework that you should have when you're networking online, tools you can use, and, sort of mistakes to avoid, and there are a couple of things that you can do right now just to sort of get started. So first thing you should do is answer what problem are you solving and how. Again, keep in mind what you're offering. The second thing is Twitter. If you are on Twitter, one of my favorite things to do is to create a private list of influencers to engage with. And I say this because if there are people on Twitter who I really admire and I want to connect with online and offline, I have to set aside time to make sure that I actually do engage with them. And what does engagement look like? That looks like sharing a link of theirs, sharing something that they've created or shared themselves. It means sending them, responding to something that they've tweeted. So if they, have a comment on something, I add my own 2 cents to it as well. And it also can look like making introductions. I've done that before where 2 people who, are talking about similar topics, but it doesn't necessarily look like they know each other. I'll say at so-and-so and at so-and-so. You both seem really passionate about the environment. You 2 should totally connect. So just make sure you're doing that. On Facebook, ask your network a professional question. I actually want to add something to that. One of the things that people underestimate on Facebook is the power of its search. So if you're looking to visit a new city or move to a new city, Facebook, yes, you can do this on LinkedIn, but I find Facebook could be a bit more powerful because it allows you to search for people who've had different kinds of relationships to different topics. So what do I mean by that? If you're looking to move to San Francisco, for example, on Facebook you can search for people who lived in San Francisco, who worked in San Francisco, who attended college in San Francisco, or people who have visited San Francisco, right? So those things allow you to uncover aspects of your network that you might have never thought of before and are not really available on something like LinkedIn, where the only thing that will come up are people who worked in San Francisco. And the truth is, yeah, you might want someone who worked in San Francisco, but anyone in your network who knows a friend, knows opportunities, their relationship can come from so many places. It can come from school, it can come from genuine interest, and so Facebook really allows you to uncover that. LinkedIn, join an active group and share a resource or tip. So there are a lot of dead groups on LinkedIn, and that's why I put active, and by dead I mean no one's posted in about a week. The larger the group, the more active it tends to be. So I would definitely look at a group in your industry or in your field of interest and share a helpful resource. Respond to somebody else's question, and just try to be as helpful as possible. And the final thing is reconnect with a former coworker or friend via email. So I love doing this. I actually find that people are so pleased to hear from you in my experience. So you say, gosh, hey, so-and-so, I was reading this article about X, and I remember back when we worked together, you were very interested in this topic, so I thought I'd send it your way. Would love to reconnect sometime soon. Really, just, like I said, people tend to be very, pleased to hear from you. And that's partially because we lose contact with people for a variety of reasons. We move, we change jobs, and so if you're willing to reconnect, most people are too. And so those are all of my tips and things that you can do today. If you have any questions, of course, I'll be on for the rest of the webinar, and also I'm on Twitter at AJ Loves Ya.
Thanks so much, Allison, and thanks for teeing up the next portion of this webinar, which is really talking about in-person networking strategies. And as Allison mentioned so well, there certainly is a lot of crossover from offline and online strategies, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, the first thing I wanted to mention that does really cross over between offline and online is the differences between acquaintances and friends. And if anybody's wondering, I did get permission, maybe or maybe not, from friends to use their photo here. But friends tend to have similar friends, and your friends probably run in the same circles that you run in. Certainly there's some outliers there, but go to Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever. Go to Facebook and see how many of your friends have mutual friends of yours, and there'll probably be a ton. So friends are certainly useful and beneficial in your life for lots of reasons. And certainly they can be beneficial in growing your network. However, let's be honest, you only have the capacity to have close personal relationships with so many people. And the most connected people out there have tons of acquaintances. And I'm not just talking about being connected on LinkedIn. As Allison mentioned, there's a lot more to that to create personal relationships with those acquaintances. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I wanted to mention the difference between acquaintances and friends, and especially as it pertains to growing your network. So, I think one of the most common things that folks think of when it comes to networking in person is probably events, whether it's a networking event or just any event that exists out there where there's a group of people getting together for a particular reason, and you're there for the intent of meeting other folks or developing relationships you already know with certain folks. So, let's say it's a nice sunny day and you have some ice cream, and this happens to you where your ice cream drops on the ground, and you're just pissed off, man. You're not going to be in a good mood going to a particular event. I'd recommend not going to the event, depending on what the event is. If it's just a networking event, we're not all celebrities. Well, maybe some of you are, but not all publicity is good publicity. So it is possible to make a bad first impression. People will know if you're in a bad mood, if you're just not yourself. So if you can't skip an event, I do have some silly tips that work pretty well. You know, it's actually been proven that if you smile, it can improve your happiness level. So even if you're kind of feeling like on the fence and you have to go to the event, you dropped your ice cream, it's like, man, I really don't want to go. You may not want to do this in public because you'll probably creep some people out, but in the privacy of your car or whatever on the way to the event, actually smile. And it actually helps you get into more of an outgoing mindset. And another silly tip that works, and this is kind of taps into our primal instincts. And in the animal kingdom, you know how a bear will intimidate other folks, other bears, by making themselves as large as possible. That actually works with humans as well. So stretch out before, again, you don't want to creep people out in public, but go ahead and give yourself a stretch. It's actually been proven to build your confidence by stretching your body out. And conversely, whether you're, or adversely, I don't know what word I'm looking for there, but the opposite. If you're in an interview, if you're going into an event, if you're crossing your arms and crossing your legs and kind of getting in this submissive position actually has been proven to lower your confidence level. So those are just a few tips, I guess, to break through the barrier when you're going to an event, you're not feeling confident, you're not feeling in a good mood. Just still go there and make that good first impression. And as Alice had mentioned, you know, valuable business relationships are very rarely developed in one event. There are over 400,000 employees that work for Michigan nonprofits currently. While that may or may not sound like a lot, when you break it down regionally, it's not that big of a number. And you're actually going to see the same people as you go to different events within the networks that you're choosing to opt in and be intentional about getting involved in, whether it's online through LinkedIn or it's through particular events that we'll talk about later. And I mentioned with acquaintances to make personal connections, and you know, to a certain degree where that's appropriate. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, where it's not just the superficial, I met you once, I connected with you on LinkedIn, and then 3 years later I asked you about a job opening at your organization. It's much more than that. So as far as maybe some of the right questions to ask, it really depends when we're talking about events especially. Be topical. So let's say you're going to, let's say you're a fundraising person or you're interested in fundraising, you go to a fundraising training. Obviously that's a topic that everybody there is going to be willing and interested and passionate to talk to you about. So that's where you may develop some of your questions. And certainly just to know that someone's a development director is not going to build a relationship. So it's up to you to use your best judgment on what type of follow-up questions to ask. But an example would be if someone's a development director, ask them why they got into that field, or how long have they been doing that, or where did they get their training for that, what other organizations have they worked for, and before you know it, you're going to find a connection. Perhaps they volunteered for the Humane Society, and you know, a follow-up question could be, oh, do you have a passion for dogs or particular animals or what, and maybe they have a passion for dogs. I tell them I have 2 pugs, and boom, there's a connection point already. So the more follow-up questions you ask on a personal level that's appropriate based on what information they're willingly giving you is going to really help you develop those acquaintances and build to some significant relationships that people remember you for, and not just someone that they know where you work and what you do there from a position description level. And Allison mentioned this earlier, really about personal or organizational branding, to be top of mind for something. What do you want to be known for? When you're having these conversations, certainly you're being very intentional and inquisitive about what you're asking to make those connections, but where are you directing the conversation to? What do you want other people to know about you? So what is you or your organization good at? You know, I'm presenting today on this particular webinar, and I've certainly had plenty of conversations with folks who deal with managing talent at organizations. And I've made it very clear that I'm trying to brand M&A and myself as an expert on managing nonprofit talent. And I've talked about this particular webinar, and me presenting here is another way for me to brand myself as an expert on that. So that's something that comes up in conversations that I try to make connections on when appropriate. But I know that's intentional by me to let other folks know that's just an initiative of ours, and we'll have other things coming down through the pipeline around that. And I think Allison mentioned this earlier. If you're a job seeker and you're networking, the worst thing you can say is I'll take anything. What do you want to do for a living? Oh, I'll do anything right now. Anything but what I'm doing. If anybody says that to me, I'll say, well, go to the any job site. There's hundreds of jobs out there. It's not really being useful. And as far as utilizing your network to help you get the next job, I'm certainly not going to recommend anybody to a friend of mine who's hiring and say, you should hire this person, they'll take anything. If you say, you know what, I'm interested in advocacy and working for alleviating homelessness or something like that, well, then that's something, because I may have connections there, and that'll trigger somebody that I can connect you with. Or if a job opening does come up, you'll be top of mind. You'll be the first thing I think of to recommend you for that. So make sure you know what you want to be known for. What is your brand? What are you trying to achieve? And then again, you know, how are you telling that? So you know what you want to be known for, but how are you delivering that message? And again, it is about your audience, not you. And that doesn't mean that they talk 99% of the time and you talk 1%, although they should talk more and you should listen more. But think about what they want to hear. So if you're at that, let's say, fundraising event, they certainly want to talk about that particular topic. So how can you tie in whatever you want to achieve to what they want to hear? And you know, the best stories and the best messages, elevator pitches, whatever you want to call them, whatever your way of delivering what your brand is, you want to be short, concise, and make it easy to retell. If it's easy to retell, other people are going to know about you. You're going to grow your network and your brand. And if people are telling other folks about whatever it is you want them to tell, it must be actionable because there's a reason they're talking about it. So if there's a job opening for a policy person at a organization that works with the homeless, they're going to talk about that because of what you mentioned. That's an interest and a passion of yours. Now it's something that someone else can retell. It was really short. It was actionable. It was easy for them to tell other folks. So the other thing you can do is really use visuals and examples as much as possible. It makes it a lot easier for folks to remember and retell that story. If I'm talking about this webinar to other folks, I'm not just going to say I did this webinar on networking the nonprofit sector. I'll actually mention, you know, we had X amount of participants. We really highlighted how to build your acquaintances as opposed to your, you know, your friends. Whatever it is, I'm actually digging a little deeper, so I'm kind of painting a picture exactly of what this was, so other people can retell it, and it's just not this fuzzy thing. So now I'm going to launch a quick poll here. I'm just curious how many folks have actually been a part of an informational interview, whether as the person interviewing or the person asking the questions or the person answering the questions. I'm just curious. So I'm going to ramble on here, really just to take up time while you guys answer the questions. And I'm going to stretch my words out, and I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to hurry and answer. Yes, no, maybe you can't remember back that far. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close this and show the results to see. It looks like most folks have, for the most part, participated in an informational interview. So that's great. So as you know, if you've participated, people love talking about themselves. And the other piece of good news is that people love helping people, especially in the nonprofit sector. Most of us have gotten into the sector to make an impact, to do some type of social good. So helping other people is certainly part of our mantra and what we want to do. By the way, if you've seen me, I'm a bald person, and it was totally unintentional to get two bald dudes here in this picture, but let's be honest, they look good. You know, those are 2 things to just keep in mind. Don't be hesitant when you're reaching out to other folks. Most people would be willing to help you. So identify a leader who's in the field or subsector that you're interested in, whether you're looking for a job or you're looking to connect. You know, I mentioned M&A's new initiatives on managing talent in the nonprofit sector. I just had an informational interview last week where I knew that the Michigan Economic Development Corporation had some new talent initiatives, and I just contacted them and asked if I could just hear more about the great work that they're doing. And they're more than willing to meet up and chat with me because I'm really talking about something that they're passionate about and they're very involved in. So while setting up the meeting can be a really appear to be an easy task, I'm going to just kind of talk about some sales techniques that you can use to really be as effective in this as possible. First off, Allison alluded to this earlier. Express your interest and passion to learn about whatever it is you want to speak with this person about and gain information on. It's not so much that you are asking them for a favor, don't go down that angle. Don't say, I'm looking for a job. I want to talk to you about where I can work. It's, I'm really interested in advocacy in the human service field, specifically with dealing with homelessness. People who are in that realm, that subsector, would be more than happy to talk about that. So make sure you express your interest and passion just to learn about the work that they're doing or work that they have done. And also, if possible, ask for an in-person meeting. Certainly, if you're reaching out to somebody in California, that may not be possible, or someone in the UP. But if it's local, get an in-person meeting. That's much more personable. They'll know what you look like in person, and it'll help develop that relationship. And then hopefully when you see them down the road at an event, you'll be more easily recognizable, and you already have a base to start or continue another conversation with them. The third point is make it as easy as possible. Keep the ball on your court. There's so many people that just reach out and say, hey, can you give me some dates and times in the next month to meet? Even though they're the ones who requested the meeting, that's just one more extra step the person you're asking has to do, and one more opportunity for them not to meet with you. So provide a few convenient dates and times, and do it over 2 weeks. They may have 1 week that they're really swamped, so don't give them 3 dates and times 3 days in a row, because they could come back and just say, no, I'm out of town those 3 days. And then all of a sudden you have to exchange more emails, and you have a chance of them not responding again. So give a few of those. When you're making calls or emails to meet with those folks, personally, when I'm asking of something from somebody through a phone call, I try not to leave a voicemail, because then it's up to them to call me back whenever they can, whether that's 3 weeks, 5 weeks, never, as opposed to if I'm calling their office phone and just not leaving a voicemail and just calling back the next day. They're probably not, if it's an office phone, they're not seeing that I'm calling every day. But then the ball's in my court, as opposed to saying, hey, can you call me whenever you have time? The other option is to, leave on the phone that, in the phone message that you will be calling back in a week if you don't hear from them, just so they know and it doesn't seem like you're pestering them. Another point with making it easy is travel to them, wherever that is, to their office, offer to buy them coffee. Just make it as easy as possible to accept your invitation to meet. This may seem obvious, maybe it doesn't, but try not to ask favors in this first meeting. Certainly, it depends on the relationship you may already have with that person. But this is the first time you're meeting with somebody. Be as selfless as possible. Yes, you're asking to hear about, a particular field or whatever topic it may be. But try not to ask for favors. Don't ask for a job. It's already implied if that's what if you told them you're looking for, you're interested in advocacy work and human services, they already know that you're looking for a job. So you don't need to ask them for that. It's just a bit of a turnoff for a lot of folks. But certainly ask if you can keep in touch in the future if you have any other questions. And also, based on your conversation, if there's anybody else that you can continue these informational interviews with. And keep expanding your network in that regard. And again, continue to follow up, especially through some of those offline measures that Alice had mentioned earlier. As you bring up certain topics, I mentioned my pug example earlier. I may identify that someone else has the same interest in that. When articles come up, share those with them. It's just another way to stay top of mind and remind people that you exist out there around a mutually of interest topic. So just a few local networking opportunities. Certainly, I think events in your field are one of the best networking opportunities out there. I mentioned a training on fundraising, for example. You're going to meet a lot of folks that are in that similar interest, or that career interest. Another example, especially in the nonprofit sector, fundraising events or award ceremonies in your field. So if you're interested in economic development, for example, I'd highly recommend, and you're in Detroit, I'd highly recommend going to the 8 Mile Boulevard annual luncheon that has 800 people there and just about everybody under the sun in that world. Or, there are lots of examples like that. So identify what events are out there in the field or whatever you're trying to accomplish to make those connections. But if you're a young person or young at heart, there's certainly lots of opportunities. Young Nonprofit Professionals Network have a few chapters in Michigan. I know in Detroit and Grand Rapids certainly. Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, which is also known as EPIP. They have a Michigan chapter and they meet all over the state, so that's really for folks interested in or currently working in with foundations. Management support organizations. You can find more information of these folks on our website. these organizations will do a lot of those trainings. So they're going to do a lot of the fundraising trainings, the governance trainings, and if it makes sense, I'd recommend you tap into those. They have lunch and learns. There's multiple ones throughout the state depending on the community you're in. Certainly Michigan Nonprofit Association, I'd highly recommend them. Our events are certainly not as prevalent as maybe the management support organizations, but we do get a lot of different folks. You're going to get a wider, more diverse pool of nonprofit folks at some of our events to really make connections and expand your network. And then we also mentioned AmeriCorps alumni networks and alumni groups, chamber groups. There are a ton of young professional groups out there. Detroit Young Professionals is a huge one, but they're all over in every community. So look that up, JCs, certainly lots of opportunities. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Chelsea Martin, who's going to really dig into leveraging all the great things you're doing maybe as a volunteer or might do as a volunteer.
All right, thanks, Bill. So just to recap really quick, I work with Bill and Sarah here at Michigan Nonprofit Association, and I've spent the last few years specifically working with the volunteer centers of Michigan, and have recently started supporting some of our other civic engagement programs here at M&A. So it's an exciting time. I'm also excited to talk about some of the trends in volunteerism and employability, as well as some opportunities for turning your volunteer experience into an employment opportunity or a connection to potential employment. Cool. All right, so why wouldn't you want to volunteer? I mean, there's all kinds of great reasons. It's good for your community, it supports nonprofits, it makes you feel good, but it also might help you get on your next job or your dream job. So it can help you gain skills, experiences, connections that are all going to leverage you into that next opportunity. All right. So this past year, the Corporation for National and Community Service, which is a leader in the field, released a report that highlighted key findings linking volunteering and employment. If you'd like to read the many page report, you can do that. There's a link at the bottom of the slide. I'm not going to belabor you with all of the pages of details, but we are going to go over some of the key findings. So they're right there, but for the long-term unemployed, volunteering can increase the likelihood of finding a job. So if you happen to have been unemployed for a long time, studies say that you're going to get a job faster if you decide to volunteer. Individuals who haven't received their high school diploma have more than a 50% greater likelihood of finding employment. And then volunteers living in rural areas have a 55% higher likelihood of finding employment. So I hope that some of these numbers, even if they don't apply to you specifically, they might help you in your work. If you're working with young people that maybe didn't complete high school, use this as an opportunity to encourage them to get involved because it will support them as well. All right, so the corporation's pretty smart. They put together this really great infographic that highlights some of those key findings if you're a visual learner. This is not a new trend as far as connecting volunteerism and employability. It's also not a recent, it wasn't just because of the recession. So they saw this trend even when our economy was doing a lot better. So as we continue to grow our economy in both the state and nationally, we expect to see this trend and connection continue. All right, so how does volunteering help you and how can you capitalize on it? For starters, volunteering helps grow and diversify a network of connections. So that could be online, but also a lot of the in-person tips that Bill shared. Those same things apply when you're volunteering within an organization. Professionals in the field have the opportunity to see you engage in a positive way, just like Allison was talking about. This isn't a deficit. This is you bringing skills to the table. You can show responsibility. You can bring new ideas to an organization as a volunteer. So all those are just great things. Volunteering can offer the opportunity for training, professional growth, and the ability to apply a formal education. So if you're somebody just starting out in the nonprofit sector, you can take some of the education you may have received at your post-high school institution and apply it to a job. It's going to help you get that real-world experience that will allow you to leverage into a full-time position. Volunteering helps to create a positive impression when you're applying for a job and can set you apart from other applicants. So even if you're looking to do some volunteer work that doesn't directly relate to your future job or your dream job, that's okay. Just having that on your resume can really help you stand apart. All right, so if you're volunteering and you're really looking to leverage that into a position, I came up with just a few tips. Consider finding a volunteer opportunity that is similar to a paid position you'd like to have. It doesn't have to be identical. This will help you get that experience and prepare you for the future job, even if it's at a different organization. I emphasize that's completely fine if it's at a different organization. Sometimes it's better. It will be easier to get those experiences and then transfer to a different organization. Don't hide the fact that your ultimate goal is to obtain a paid position at that organization or a similar organization. Being that transparent can aid in your networking and help whoever is supervising you keep their eye open for potential positions. So as you do really well and you're bringing those skills, they'll keep their ears open, and when they hear, oh, well, maybe the Red Cross has a position, maybe they can connect you. If you need any training or support to better do the volunteer opportunity, don't hesitate to ask. It can be a skill building opportunity that can support your next job search, help you do this volunteer position really well, and you'll be able to leverage that into a position. All right, a couple more, and Bill really hammered this home, but network, network, network. So while you're there volunteering, just keep your eye on the prize, be professional at all times. Always have your game face on, because people will remember how you conduct yourself in that type of environment, and you want all of those memories to be really positive. Be sure to include the experience that you gain on your resume. Consider updating an employment title position on your resume to just read experience. That opens it up to both volunteer as well as paid experiences that you may have. Volunteering can also fill employment gaps. So if you happen to have been unemployed for a period of time, but you were volunteering at that same time, it will help limit those red flags that sometimes employers are looking for when you have a gap on your resume. Volunteering also, again, helps you stand out from other candidates being considered, so don't hesitate to include that. And then I cannot emphasize this enough. It truly is all about professionalism and how you conduct yourself. So capitalizing on volunteerism means that you need to take that position just as seriously as you would a full-time position, especially if you're in between jobs and you're looking to leverage it into another full-time position. The world is small. People will remember if you worked really hard and if you followed through, so don't underestimate that when you're volunteering. Okay, and this is my final recap, another cool infographic, but this is why volunteering works. So when you volunteer, it increases your social capital, so it expands those networks and those experiences that you have that Bill highlighted. So you're getting outside of just maybe your friends' network, but you're growing your professional contacts. You may have opportunities to attend more of those social functions. You can get those employment leads, and then you may even have the opportunity to develop social relationships. You can make friends with people that you're volunteering with. Then it also allows you to increase your own human capital, so apply your formal education, grow your knowledge, your skills, your abilities, take leadership opportunities, and all of those are just going to lead to future employment.
Great. Well, thanks, Chelsea, and thanks again, Allison, and everybody else for joining us. We have the opportunity, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to type them in there. We'll do our best to answer those. We appreciate you joining us here today. We know this is a huge topic, so obviously this is very surface level, but hopefully you have some immediate takeaways that you can use going forward to accomplish whatever you're looking to accomplish. So we'll hang tight here for a few minutes and give you an opportunity again. You can answer those, ask those questions in the pane on your right and submit those, and we'll see those and answer them accordingly. So ask away, and I can say from personal experience, we have hired people here who have used volunteer experience on their resume. We've hired people here who have volunteered here or have been AmeriCorps Vistas here. Really, those come down to, especially your volunteer experience, is the employer's test driving you. It's a really opportunity for them to see, do you fit in the culture? Because that's when it comes to employment, to secret if you didn't know that yet. It's always culture, because you can't teach culture, but you can teach skills. So if you don't fit the culture, it's going to be bad. So that's an opportunity, volunteering, to really see, oh, and it's good for you too. You don't want to be in a culture that doesn't fit you. So it's a good way for you to test drive the organization. Let's see here. I see some questions coming in. The question is, if you don't necessarily feel comfortable with social media, do you think LinkedIn alone is enough to get you by? And Allison, obviously you're the expert here on that. You know, I think actually it looks like maybe Allison had been bumped out. Maybe she had a lunch date. You know, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Chelsea?
I think starting with LinkedIn is more than adequate, especially if that's all the time that you have to manage it. It's better to do one thing particularly well than it is to spread yourself too thin or get into a social network that you don't feel particularly comfortable with. But I think Allison just joined us, so we can give her a minute to see if her audio clicks back on. And Bashar, maybe she can answer your question for you in a moment.
Yeah, and also I think with that question, to what Allison's point of where is those that you want to connect with at. So are the folks you're looking to connect with at, especially as it pertains to maybe looking for a job? It depends on what you're looking to connect on. Certainly LinkedIn is obviously viewed by most as a more professional setting where it's more focused on business relationships. So that could be, if that's where could be the okay to only be on there if that's what you're really, that's the audience you're really looking to connect with. So Allison, I see you just rejoined us. We weren't sure if you had a better lunch offer. That's why you bumped off. The question was
sorry, yeah, I just got bumped off, and I'm sorry about that. I think I missed part of the question. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, it's just if you don't feel comfortable with social media, do you think LinkedIn alone is enough to get you by?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think especially since LinkedIn is slowly expanding what it offers in terms of being able to find new people to connect with. You know, one thing that LinkedIn always recommends is, you know, only connect with people on LinkedIn that you already know. And I think in that regard, it does make it a very powerful platform for managing your network. But if you're interested in connecting with new people, you know, groups are a great way to learn and to connect with people that you might not otherwise have known. And it's also great, I mean, and definitely if you're just starting with social networking or social media with your networking, you know, I'm a big fan of just picking one that you really, really like and going with it, and LinkedIn is definitely the best bet. You don't have to spread yourself thin with different platforms. And if you're just sort of dipping your toes in it, LinkedIn is the best, primarily because people are on that platform with the goal of meeting other people or strengthening their own networks.
Thanks, Allison. And if anybody has any other questions, we'll hang tight here for a moment to let you have an opportunity to jot those down. I'm not seeing any other ones come in here, but again, we'll hang tight for another minute. You know, and as it pertains to volunteering, obviously, your primary reasons should be to have impact at that particular organization, give back and contribute, which I know Chelsea alluded to or mentioned. But there's no reason you shouldn't benefit from those opportunities, and there's no reason you shouldn't be strategic in how you're volunteering, taking on those skill-based volunteer roles. Certainly recommend serving soup at a soup kitchen. It's definitely something great. But as far as you know, benefiting for building your network and building your, that could build your network, but building your skill set, maybe taking on managing a special event or contributing to some type of fundraising role. Most nonprofits, if not all, really have some type of fundraising, and it all varies, but based on what you're interested in, certainly look at those skill-based opportunities that get you much more involved, where you're managing meetings, perhaps, managing committees, things like that. So I'm not seeing any other questions. We'll be sending out an email. Oh, we got one last one in here. What's the best strategy to eventually get your resume to someone you have met with to learn more about passion interest? one thing I would mention, it sounds like you've already met with somebody, and I don't know if there's an open opportunity, but certainly folks that I've met with and have some kind of relationship with, I don't think it would be a bad idea if they're in the field that you want and maybe they have HR experience, just ask them to take a look at your resume and give you any tips, and if it accurately reflects what someone in that person's position may look for. Again, you're asking for their advice. You're not necessarily soliciting them, so it's a little different than saying, hey, will you give me a job and pass this along? You're more asking for their advice, and you've already hopefully expressed your interest in that particular field. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I don't know. I mean, there has to be a purpose for your outreach with the resume. So if there is a position, you've already met with them, I certainly think, based on your own opinion on how your relationship was with that person, to ask them, hey, I saw this position. I really think I'm very interested in it. I think I do it well for these 3 reasons, and I think it would be helpful to give them a short 1 sentence, 2 sentences of why you think you do it well, and ask them if they could, go to the hiring manager. That way they can take what you just told them to that hiring manager, if they're not it, and really be an advocate for you. Any other questions before we step off here? Well, thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, you see our names on there, and hopefully you have our contact information. Certainly at Michigan Nonprofit Association, you can reach us through our website and our social media. We encourage you to build your network through those. Thank you, Allison, for joining us. Again, we'll be sending out an email with the recording as well as the PowerPoint and a short evaluation, so we encourage you to fill that out so we can help provide more valuable programming to you in the future. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.